When my mom's new relationship started, a lot changed in our lives. My stepfather, Aiden, was at home that day. I was in the kitchen after breakfast as usual, doing the dishes and cleaning up. I was so engrossed in my work that I didn't notice someone approaching from behind. I was startled and gasped when a rough hand touched my waist. His gaze and approach made me uncomfortable, but I couldn't say anything out of fear. This event continued to echo in my mind, but I couldn't say anything to anyone because I didn't want to upset my mother. Hello, my name is Evelyn. I am 19 years old. I have lived with my mom since I was a child because my father passed away when I was young. My mom is a strong and resilient woman. She sacrificed a lot to raise me, and she always taught me how to be strong in the face of difficulties. But everything changed when my mom told me about Aiden and that she was in a serious relationship with him. It was the first time my mom had ever seemed so happy with someone. The day I met Aiden, I was stunned. He was a tall, handsome man who looked only a few years older than my mom. Anyone who saw him might have thought he was my mom's brother, not her boyfriend. I had a hard time understanding why Aiden chose my mother. Although my mother told me at every opportunity that Aiden loved her and that the age difference was not important, this did not convince me. Especially Aiden's strange looks at me made me feel uneasy. My mom and Aiden got married in a short time. Everything seemed fine at first. Aiden was very kind to my mom, helped her with housework, and seemed like a perfect husband. But over time, strange things started to happen at home. One day, after taking a shower, I noticed that my underwear was missing. At first, I thought I had put them somewhere else, but I couldn't find them. When I asked my mom and Aiden, they both said that no one had been in the bathroom. This happened several more times. When I was taking a shower and saw a vague silhouette behind the frosted glass of the bathroom door, I got goosebumps. When I approached the door and asked who it was, I got no answer. After that day, I started to feel uncomfortable at home. Aiden's looks at me, his behavior, and these strange events were eating me up inside. My mother was very happy, and I didn't want to spoil this happiness, but I couldn't help suspecting Aiden's intentions. As the days passed, the discomfort inside me was increasing. Aiden's presence was becoming more and more frightening every day. He was as kind and caring as ever around my mom, but when we were alone, he was a completely different person. He seemed to follow my every move. Sometimes I would leave the room, and out of the corner of my eye, I would see him watching me. Mom never noticed. I was afraid to say anything that would overshadow her happiness, but it was eating me up. One night when I woke up, I was startled by the sound of movement in my room. I opened my eyes, but I couldn't see anything in the darkness. I held my breath and waited. Something like a shadow moved quickly next to my bed. When I turned on the lamp in panic, there was no one there. Only my door was ajar. I tried to calm myself down, thinking that maybe I was dreaming, but the restlessness kept me from blinking all night. The next day, I gathered my courage and decided to talk to my mother. I tried to tell her about my discomfort with Aiden's behavior, but my mother, once again, did not take me seriously. Evelyn, you say such things because you don't like Aiden. He is a good man and he loves me very much. Please stop blaming him, she said. Mom's reaction made me feel alone. I knew now that she wouldn't believe what I said at a time when she was so happy. But things got worse. One day when I came back from school, I noticed that some of my things in my room had been moved. When I opened my drawer, I found a note tucked between my underwear. The note said only this: "I'm with you." My heart started beating fast. I wanted to tell my mom right away, but what good would that do? She was already convinced that Aiden was perfect. My only choice now was to find out the truth behind all this for myself. One night, after my mom and Aiden were asleep, I quietly wandered around the house. I went into Aiden's study. When I opened a drawer in his desk, I found some of my missing underwear. My heart almost stopped. I couldn't hold back the tears. I didn't know what to do. I had to find more evidence. I searched for a while and realized that he had left his phone on the table. There was a password on his phone, but I took a few tries, guessing. Finally, I managed to open the phone with my mom's date of birth. My blood ran cold as I scrolled through the messages and photos. There were pictures of me that Aiden had taken without me knowing. Some of them looked like they were taken through frosted glass in the bath. some of them while I was sleeping in my room. My hands started to shake. This was no longer a figment of my imagination. Aiden was dangerous. I put the phone back and quietly returned to my room. I knew that even if I told my mother this information, she wouldn't believe it. I thought about calling the police, but I wasn't sure if the evidence I had was enough. I couldn't sleep for a single second that night. I had to make a plan. I had to protect my mom and reveal Aiden's true face. Evelyn tried to come up with a plan that night. She knew she needed concrete evidence to expose Aiden to her mother and even the police. But in the process, she couldn't let Aiden bother her any longer. He had to be more careful and cautious. The next morning, while having breakfast at the same table with Aiden, she could hardly contain herself. Aiden was smiling gently at his mother, chatting with her as usual. Evelyn noticed that his eyes occasionally shifted to her. Aiden's gaze was more unsettling than usual. Evelyn felt something had changed at that moment. Aiden might have realized that she suspected something. Trying to remain calm, Evelyn began to implement her plan. The first step was to somehow catch Aiden red-handed. So before going to bed that evening, she placed her phone in the same way she hid it in a bookcase. He set the phone's camera towards the door of his room and started recording. If Aiden entered her room at night, this time she would have proof. That night, Evelyn waited in her bed, keeping her eyes open. As the hours passed, the silence in the house grew heavier. Just when she thought nothing was going to happen, she heard the handle of her door turn slowly. She held her breath. The door opened softly and a shadow entered. Evelyn pretended to be asleep, keeping her eyes closed, but her whole body was tense. The shadow silently approached her bed. It stood motionless for a while, then came out again and closed the door quietly. Evelyn couldn't move for a while, her heart beating wildly. Finally, she waited until morning, and when everyone woke up, she ran to her phone. When she watched the recording, what she saw was chilling. Aiden had entered her room at night. He had slowly approached her bed and watched her for a few seconds. Evelyn's hands were shaking, but now she had concrete evidence. After this incident, Evelyn took action. She waited for the right time to show her mother Aiden's true face. While her mom was out shopping that day, Evelyn waited for an opportunity to somehow access Aiden's phone. Finally, she got her hands on Aiden's phone while he was in the shower. She rediscovered the photos and messages she had seen earlier and transferred them to her own phone. Meanwhile, she also found some clues that Aiden was making other disturbing plans for his mother. When her mother came home, Evelyn decided she could no longer keep quiet. She called her mother into her room and showed her the evidence, but her mother refused to believe it at first. "This must be a misunderstanding. Aiden would never do such a thing," she said. Evelyn tearfully showed the recording to her mother. The footage of Aiden entering his room at night shocked her. The look on her face was a moment Evelyn would never forget. Her mother had finally accepted the truth, but it wasn't enough. Aiden had to be stopped. Evelyn and her mom immediately called the police and handed over the evidence. Aiden was soon arrested, and it was revealed that he had harmed other women and families in the past. After this incident, Evelyn and her mother tried to get their lives back on track. Evelyn became closer to her mother than ever before.